Imagine one of the most formidable military forces on the planet, a titan of traditional warfare, suddenly finding its gears jammed and its armor melting under the glare of a silent, invisible light. It sounds like the fever dream of a science fiction novelist. But on the shifting front lines of modern conflict, this is the cold, hard reality of a new era. In the opening chapters of the invasion of Ukraine, the battlefield was a predictable, albeit horrific, theater of Soviet-style grinding. Massive artillery barrages, columns of heavy armor, and the constant thud of long-range missiles. However, the playbook that had governed European land warfare for decades was incinerated almost overnight. The sky, once the domain of multi-million-dollar fighter jets, was suddenly choked by swarms of inexpensive Shahed drones, while cruise missiles sought to break the spirit of Kyiv at every sunrise. The strategy was a brutal, archaic math of crushing the opposition through sheer mass, pushing a relentless meat grinder forward at any cost. But that massive, ruthless machine is now finding itself caught in a lethal reversal. The evolution from the blood-soaked trenches of 2022 to the high-tech landscape of today didn't happen through a gradual shift in policy. It was forged in the heat of death zones, where every lesson was paid for with the lives of those on the front. The rusty, cumbersome legacy of the Soviet era has been unceremoniously discarded, replaced by a terrifying new ecosystem of combat. Right now, hybrid unmanned aerial vehicles are stalking the clouds like apex predators, and specialized sea drones have transformed the Black Sea into a literal graveyard for traditional naval power. From these deadly ashes, 4 critical systems have emerged to rewrite the fate of the war, turning the hunters into the hunted. Picture the scene at midnight. Death is no longer a distant threat. It rains down silently from above in the form of autonomous machines that feel no fear and follow no human orders. Yet, just as the threat approaches, an invisible flash erupts, and the metallic intruder melts into scrap in a matter of seconds. This isn't magic. It is the arrival of directed energy weapons, the invisible light that is beginning to dominate the horizon. While the world watches the giants of the defense industry, like Lockheed Martin, deploy their 60,000-watt Helios systems from the decks of billion-dollar destroyers, a more radical transformation is happening on the ground. The West may be celebrating the Dragonfire system, capable of incinerating targets for the price of a cup of coffee, but Ukraine has done something even more startling. They haven't just waited for Western corporations to deliver these tools. They have independently mastered the very technology that global superpowers have spent decades and billions of dollars trying to perfect. The rules of the front lines are being shredded and rewritten at this very moment. In the midst of what seemed like a hopeless struggle against overwhelming Russian aerial superiority, a silent technology called Sunray emerged. It proved that the terrifying waves of drone attacks could be halted by devices that surprisingly shared DNA with a common lawnmower engine. This is the kind of breakthrough that keeps military strategists in the Kremlin awake at night because it exposes a fundamental, unfixable vulnerability in traditional mass attack doctrines. Sunray doesn't look like the flashy, red-beamed lasers of Hollywood cinema. It is a ghost in the machine, completely silent, emitting no visible light, and producing no dramatic explosion upon firing. Instead, it is a compact, deadly energy concentrator, small enough to fit in the trunk of a standard car, appearing more like a hobbyist telescope than a weapon of mass destruction. This system relies on a sophisticated array of sensitive cameras that scan the horizon, lock onto a target, and allow an operator to neutralize a drone hundreds of meters away with the simple press of a button. The target simply drops from the sky, engulfed in flames as if struck by a localized bolt of lightning. This is the new math of war. Clean, cheap, and devastatingly efficient. While corporate executives in Washington celebrate massive defense contracts, the true architects of this dark new era are the nameless Ukrainian engineers working in the mud and the dark. Their motivation isn't a profit margin, it is survival. While the U.S. in place, Navy spent 4 years and $150 million to bring Helios to life. These engineers produced the Sunray prototype in half that time on a fraction of the budget. When this system enters mass production, its unit cost will be a mere drop in the bucket compared to the missiles it replaces, signaling a seismic shift in the global arms market where the need to survive has proven to be a faster engine of innovation than the need to profit. Building on this technological shift, the logic in Kyiv is clear. To survive, you must constantly revolutionize the military industry or face certain destruction. This mindset has birthed a second, even more potent layer of defense known as the Trident system. While Sunray acts as a silent hunter for smaller drones, Trident is designed to operate at significantly higher power levels, possessing the raw energy required to neutralize the hardened warheads of incoming missiles. This is a critical development because it saves the Ukrainian air defense network from being saturated, a tactic where Russia launches hundreds of cheap drones just to force the defense to waste its multi-million-dollar missiles. By using light to swat away these threats, the math of the war changes overnight. Of course, the Kremlin is not sitting idly by as their aerial advantage evaporates. Moscow has accelerated the development of its own directed energy weapons, specifically the Peresvet and Zadira systems. However, intelligence suggests a stark difference in quality. While the Russian systems act primarily as dazzlers intended to blind sensors, the Ukrainian engineered counterparts are designed for physical destruction. Ukraine is acutely aware that this technological lead is a fleeting window of opportunity, pushing them towards systems that are even more versatile and capable of being deployed in massive autonomous swarms. This brings us to a terrifying new category of weaponry, the rocket drone, or the missile, UAV hybrid. These systems bridge the gap between the surgical precision of a cruise missile and the low-cost flexibility of a simple drone. The flagship of this effort is the Palianytsia. Powered by a turbojet engine, this hybrid can scream through the sky at 900 kilometers per hour, carrying a 100-kilogram warhead across a range of 650 kilometers. It finds its targets using a sophisticated dual guidance system, making it nearly impossible to intercept with traditional electronic warfare. The most shocking aspect, however, remains the price tag. Ukraine aims to produce 3,000 of these units by 2025 at a cost that is literally one-tenth the price of a standard cruise missile. The impact of these hybrids is already being felt deep within Russian territory. Strategic reports confirm that these low-cost strikes have successfully targeted energy infrastructure, leading to a significant 20% fuel shortage in parts of the Russian economy. The targets are no longer just frontline positions. They are military air bases, massive fuel depots, and strategic logistics centers located hundreds of miles from the border. The Palianytsia is effectively striking at the very heart of the war economy, causing chaos in Russian logistics and cutting off the vital arteries that feed the front lines. The Russian war machine is essentially bleeding out from 1,000 small, high-precision cuts. Every strategic asset within a 650-kilometer radius of the border is now perpetually exposed to this relentless aerial pressure, and the defensive measures the Kremlin has tried to implement, such as the S-400 missile systems, are proving to be an expensive and often ineffective shield against such a numerous and nimble foe. This offensive reach is further bolstered by the Peklo drone, a monster of a machine with a 700-kilometer range and a massive 800-kilogram warhead, designed to level fortified structures. Alongside it, the Ruta drone has already been optimized for naval strikes, marking the beginning of a coordinated campaign against maritime platforms. These systems have successfully hit the port of Novorossiysk and various oil refineries, proving that distance is no longer a safety net for strategic assets. Even Moscow is no longer out of reach. While the Kremlin attempts to counter these threats with intense electronic jamming and GPS spoofing, the latest Ukrainian navigation systems use terrain-following technology similar to that found in high-end Tomahawk missiles, which allows them to navigate accurately even when all satellite signals are blocked. This relentless push for innovation on land and in the air has naturally bled over into the maritime domain, where a nation without a traditional navy has managed to humiliate a historical naval superpower. In the Black Sea, the traditional rules of naval engagement have been tossed into the depths. Ukraine has developed a specialized expertise in asymmetric maritime warfare using unmanned surface vehicles, or USVs, to push back the Russian Black Sea fleet. What began as simple explosive-laden kamikaze boats has evolved into a sophisticated fleet of multi-purpose platforms like the Sea Baby and the Magura V5. The Sea Baby, for instance, is no longer just a one-way weapon. It is an AI-assisted platform capable of carrying a 2,000-kilogram payload, including rocket launchers and even torpedoes, over a range of 1,500 kilometers. This means that from a hidden launch point on a beach, a small team can threaten a warship halfway across the sea. The Macgregor V5 has been even more prolific, with reports indicating it has struck 18 different Russian vessels, half of which were rendered completely irreparable. This includes high-profile targets like the missile corvette Ivanovets and the landing ship Caesar Kunikov, proving that even the most heavily armed surface ships are vulnerable to a coordinated swarm of low-profile, high-speed drones. The pinnacle of this maritime revolution occurred in the cold waters of December 2025, a date that will be etched into naval history forever. In a daring and unprecedented operation, the Ukrainian security services deployed a specialized underwater drone known as the Subcabi to strike a Russian Kilo-class submarine while it was anchored in the port of Novorossiysk. This was the first time in the history of modern warfare that an autonomous underwater vehicle successfully targeted and neutralized a submarine. The vessel, a strategic asset valued at nearly $500 million, was rendered completely unusable by a machine that cost a mere fraction of that price. This single event served as the final blow in a strategic campaign of pressure that forced the Russian Black Sea Fleet to retreat, abandoning their historic base in Sevastopol for the perceived safety of more distant ports. This retreat has fundamentally altered the security landscape of Crimea, the peninsula held by Russia since 2014, which now sits precariously within the reach of these relentless seaborne predators. The scope of this naval campaign is expanding beyond military vessels to target the economic lifelines of the conflict. Ukraine has begun systematically hunting the shadow fleet Russian oil tankers used to bypass international sanctions and fund the ongoing war effort. Tankers like the Sharon and Virat have already felt the impact of Sea Baby drones, leading to significant disruptions in oil transportation across the Black Sea. Looking ahead, there are indications that these operations will not be confined to local waters. The next generation of Ukrainian naval drones is being designed for long-range missions that could target Russian ports, bridges, and even trade routes as far away as the Mediterranean. While Russia attempts to field its own counterparts, such as the Sirius 82, intelligence reports suggest they remain in the primitive stages of development. For now, Ukraine maintains a crushing asymmetric superiority on the waves, a feat achieved by a nation that on paper doesn't even possess a conventional navy. As the offensive reaches deeper and the naval war intensifies, Ukraine has simultaneously taken a revolutionary leap in the realm of domestic protection with the introduction of the drone wall. This is where the shift from offensive superiority to impenetrable defense becomes truly visible. Using the DWS-1 system, a technology pioneered by the French startup A-Trade and battle-tested for the first time in Ukraine, the very nature of air defense is being transformed. Unlike traditional systems that rely on a single, massive radar and expensive interceptor missiles, the drone wall allows a single operator to command a swarm of 100 drones at once. This network creates a layered curtain of FPV interceptor drones in the sky. When an incoming threat, such as an Iranian-made Shahad or a Russian glide bomb, is detected, the AI-powered command center directs the nearest drones to collide with the target and detonate, neutralizing the threat before it can reach its objective. What makes the drone wall a genuine game-changer is its incredible economic and operational sustainability. In traditional warfare, a Patriot missile launch costs between $2 and $4 million. Once fired, that investment is gone regardless of the outcome. However, the DWS-1 system operates on a logic of reuse. If a swarm of 100 drones is launched to intercept a small group of intruders, only the drones that actually make contact are lost. The remaining 90 drones simply fly back to their base, land, and are ready for the next mission within minutes. Furthermore, each unit carries its own 3D map of the local terrain, allowing it to navigate and hunt entirely independent of GPS. This makes the system virtually immune to the heavy electronic jamming that Russia uses to blind most Western-supplied equipment. This innovation was a finalist in the NATO Innovation Competition and is now being looked at as the blueprint for a continental-scale drone wall that could eventually protect the entire eastern border of Europe. This convergence of laser weapons, rocket drone hybrids, maritime hunters, and autonomous defensive walls represents a fundamental pivot in the Ukrainian war doctrine. The nation is no longer a passive recipient of Western military aid. It has transformed into a global power center for the development and export of cutting-edge military technology. President Zelensky's announcement of plans to open 10 joint weapons production facilities across Europe by 2026 is a testament to this new reality. Under a massive drone deal with the United States, Ukraine is aiming to produce a staggering 10 million drones per year, establishing a $50 billion framework that will define the future of the global defense industry. We are witnessing the birth of a new military-industrial complex, one born of necessity and accelerated by the brutal realities of the 21st century battlefield. As we analyze the cumulative impact of these four specialized systems, several strategic scenarios begin to emerge that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of the conflict. The first is the reality of economic attrition. Ukraine's mastery of low-cost drones and laser weaponry is systematically depleting Russia's inventory of expensive high-end missiles and air defense platforms. When a simple, locally made interceptor or a burst of laser energy can neutralize a Shahed drone for pennies on the dollar, the cost asymmetry begins to favor the defender. In contrast, every time Russia is forced to fire an S-400 missile, which costs millions to stop a relatively cheap Ukrainian hybrid drone, their ability to sustain a long-term war effort is physically and financially weakened. This is not just a battle of soldiers, but a battle of balance sheets, where the more efficient innovator eventually wins. Secondly, the introduction of systems like the Palianytsia has provided Ukraine with a newfound strategic depth. By bringing targets near Moscow and deep within the Russian interior into play, Kyiv has effectively neutralized the sanctuary that the Russian hinterland once provided. This capability forces the Kremlin to pull its air defense assets away from the front lines to protect vital command centers and energy hubs, thereby limiting their army's overall maneuverability and making their supply lines increasingly fragile. On the maritime front, the continuous pressure from naval drones has turned the Black Sea into a no-go zone for traditional surface fleets. This asymmetric victory has allowed Ukraine to secure its vital grain export routes, providing a much-needed boost to its own economy while simultaneously dealing a staggering blow to Russia's maritime prestige and logistical control. These innovations are doing more than just protecting Ukrainian soil. They are actively shaping the future defense doctrine of the entire NATO alliance. High-level officials, including the EU Defense Commissioner and the German and Polish defense ministers, have openly acknowledged that Ukraine is now the world's leading classroom for unmanned technology. The proposal for a continental drone wall along Europe's eastern border is no longer a theoretical exercise, but a planned initiative based directly on the successes of the DWS-1 system. Global leaders are beginning to realize that the wars of tomorrow will not be won by the side with the most tanks, but by the side with the best algorithms and the most adaptable autonomous networks. Ukraine is proving that a smaller, more agile force can utilize artificial intelligence and decentralized manufacturing to hold a superpower at bay. Despite these incredible leaps forward, the path remains fraught with immense challenges. Russia is a learning adversary, constantly upgrading its electronic warfare suites and launching targeted strikes against Ukrainian production facilities to stifle this innovation at the source. However, by strategically moving production lines into neighboring European countries, Ukraine is creating a resilient transnational manufacturing network that is nearly impossible to dismantle. This shift ensures that the flow of innovation remains constant, regardless of the situation on the ground. These four systems, laser weapons, rocket drone hybrids, naval drones, and drone walls, have effectively overturned the traditional understanding of military superiority. In the end, we are witnessing a historic transformation where the fate of nations is determined by the synergy of human bravery and machine intelligence. Ukraine has moved from the edge of collapse to becoming an indispensable cornerstone of global security architecture, offering a blueprint for how modern democracies can defend themselves in an age of high-tech aggression. The silent light and the autonomous swarms are no longer just tools of war. They are the markers of a new era where survival depends on the ability to innovate faster than the enemy can react. As these death machines continue to evolve, they raise a profound question for the world. Will this terrifying new technology lead us to a state of permanent, high-tech stalemate, or will it finally provide the decisive edge needed to bring about a lasting peace? The arsenal is far from closed, and as the rules of engagement continue to shift, the world can only watch and wait to see what emerges next from the mud and the silicon.